Good morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're letting people enter the room. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the 16th Annual Women in Business Conference. My name is Cassie, Gevry, and I am the advisor for the Women in Business Committee through the Ciocca Center for Business Ethics and Society here at the college. I have the unique pleasure of working with the Student Organizing Committee, and it's a true joy to see these students bring the conference to life and to see each of them grow as leaders throughout their time on the Hill. The Women in Business Network has certainly grown, and we are thrilled to see so many of you here today. As you may know, the conference was 100% virtual last year, as we celebrated the 15th anniversary with record-breaking attendance, more than double our in-person numbers, with many joining from around the world, as we have again here today. This year, we made the executive decision to hold a hybrid conference to support the important work of holding in-person classes and the overall college experience for our current students. In the future, we hope to maintain this virtual option while also welcoming our alumni to campus once again. We appreciate the commitment our alumni have made to being women for others and giving their time and expertise as speakers and mentors, to the college for supporting the progress of female leaders, as we are soon to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of women here at the college, and to the committee. Thank you for everything you have done to organize yet another successful event. Many thanks to our attendees for being here, wherever you may be. We hope you enjoy everything in store for you today. At this time, I would like to introduce the provost of the college, Margaret Freije. She is a mathematician and leader in Jesuit higher education and the first woman to hold this top academic post at the college. Provost Freije earned her bachelor's at BC and her PhD at Brown, both in mathematics. She has distinguished herself as a teacher, scholar, administrator, and overall valuable resource for students and faculty alike. We thank her for all of her support over the years and for being here with us today. So please join me in welcoming Provost Freije.
Thank you, Cassie. And thank you to the organizing committee. It is really a pleasure to welcome all of you, students, alumni, and friends to the Women in Business Conference. As you've heard, this is the 16th year of the Women in Business Conference, the 16th time that women students and alumni have gathered together to speak to one another and learn from one another. Up until fall 2019, we were all gathered in Hogan Ballroom, never imagining what might come. And last year, the committee successfully shifted to a fully virtual conference. And this year they've had to shift once again to a hybrid structure with some of us in person and some online. As we've moved through this extraordinary time of pandemic, we have learned many things. We have seen more clearly the inequities in our society, inequities in healthcare based on race and socioeconomic status, unequal resources in school systems, inequities in the availability of childcare, and the disparate impact of this particular disruption on the careers of women. And we have learned the critical importance of community and creativity, flexibility, and the importance of having the resiliency to move forward even in the face of uncertainty. While I hope that one day the SARS-CoV-2 virus will be fully controlled and have no more impact than a mild strain of the flu, I hope also that we all recognize that we cannot go back. We cannot unsee what we have seen, and we should not want to unlearn what we have learned. Rather, as we see today in the work done by the organizers of this conference, and as I suspect we will hear from our keynote speakers, we need to build on what we have learned and move forward in new ways to work together to address the challenges of this world. Now, most of you know the mantra of the Ciocca Center, from any major to any career. It might not be a surprise to you that people are a bit skeptical of that claim. Students, perhaps some of your parents are skeptical of that claim. And perhaps you are wondering about that claim as well. But the claim is based on a track record and a couple of key commitments, commitments on our part and commitments on your part. The track record is clear. We are joined today by hundreds of successful women. You can look at the career development outcomes page to see the success of recent students. The commitments are perhaps less clear. Our commitment is that your Holy Cross education will give you the following things. First, an ability to work hard, and sometimes really hard. An ability to synthesize complex materials from multiple sources and to find the key ideas and trends in that material. An ability to write well and to speak clearly and compellingly. An ability to be creative and imaginative as you approach the world. Both to develop your understanding of the world as it is and to propel you to imagine how it might be. An ability to ask good questions, sometimes the questions that others have not thought of, and sometimes the questions that others are afraid to ask. And finally, a grounding in an ethical framework that prioritizes those on the margins and that compels you to work for and with others. Our conviction is that these things, an ability to work hard, communicate clearly, work with complex materials, be creative and ask good questions. These skills grounded in an ethical framework are what you need to be an engaged citizen and a strong member of the many communities you will join. And it is also what you will need to be a successful leader in business, healthcare, education, the arts, government service, or any other field. The path is not easy, and perhaps it never was. But there is no doubt that the world of work is a little more challenging now than it was way back in the dark ages when I graduated. You will need to be flexible and constantly learning as you move through your career. And now, what about your commitments? First, you need to show up. You need to take advantage of what is being offered to you. Second, you need to have the courage and the confidence to put yourself out there, to ask questions, to reach out for help, to network with alumni, to find out what career paths might be possible for you. Third, you need to work hard. And finally, you need to be reflective, to think about your strengths and talents, to think about what gives you joy, and to try to imagine how that connects with the needs of the world. The good news is that you have many people who are attending this conference and thousands of others who are available on the HC network who will reach out their hands to help you. I have never heard of a story of an alum refusing a call from a current Holy Cross student. They are there to reach out to support you. They too are women for and with others. So students, start now. You already showed up this morning, and now it's time to take the next step. Introduce yourself, make connections, ask questions, and enjoy your day. I wish you the best at today's conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Provost Freije, and good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Casey, and I'm a senior this year at Holy Cross. I'm a political science major and have 2 minors, one in business, ethics, and society, and another in Italian studies. I'm also working towards a certificate in business fundamentals. As the co-chair of the Women in Business Planning Committee, It is my pleasure to welcome you to our 16th annual conference. It has been so exciting to watch this conference grow over the past 4 years as both a conference attendee and a member of the planning committee. At this time, I would like to introduce Nalani Ramos Ruiz, class of 2021, who will serve as the moderator for our keynote interview today. Nalani is currently participating in the Contracts Leadership Development Program at Raytheon Technologies and was recently elected to the Board of Trustees for the College of the Holy Cross. On campus, Nalani was a sociology major with a concentration in Latin American, Latinx, and Caribbean studies with a certificate in business fundamentals. During her 4 years at Holy Cross, she served as the Ciocca Center as Diversity Student Liaison and co-chair of the Women in Business Conference Committee. In this role, she successfully managed the transition of the Women in Business Conference from an in-person to a virtual event to celebrate the 15th anniversary. She also fostered a partnership with Dress for Success to provide opportunities for Holy Cross students to connect with the Worcester community through volunteer work. Originally from Lawrence, Massachusetts, she graduated from Notre Dame Cristo Rey High School. Nalani received a Yawkey Scholarship, was awarded the Maggie Wilderotter Class of 1977 Scholarship at Holy Cross, and was named to the Dean's List as a senior. Now, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Kate Jhaveri, Class of 1995, as Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at the NBA. Kate is responsible for leading the global marketing operations for the NBA, NBA G League, and NBA 2K League, including the development of innovative marketing campaigns and brand messaging across all platforms to grow the game around the world using advanced consumer data strategies. Prior to joining the NBA in 2019, Jhaveri served as the Chief Marketing Officer of Twitch and the Head of Consumer Marketing at Twitter. She also previously served as Head of Brand Marketing at Facebook and spent 7 years at Microsoft overseeing the worldwide marketing communications team for Windows, Internet Explorer, and Bing.com. Earlier in her career, she was manager of corporate strategy at Dell. She received her MBA from Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business and graduated with a bachelor's degree in English and Spanish from College of the Holy Cross. Now I will turn the floor over to Nalani and Kate.
Thank you so much for the introductions, Christina. I'm really, really excited to be here and to be interviewing you, Kate. So wonderful to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here and so excited to be back on the Hill, even if it's virtually today.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I enjoyed the most was being on campus. And, you know, as most of us, part of the alumni in the space are reminiscing our memories on the Hill. What were some of your favorite activities, spots, memories when you were a student?
Ooh, so I definitely have a few. The entire time that I was on campus, I was a Healy girl. So definitely have lots of memories of living in Healy and lots of memories. I'll just leave it there. And then also, I spent a lot of time on the crew team. So definitely lots of time down on the water early in the morning and hitting up the cafeteria way before anybody else was up. So those are some definite memories that I hold on to. But really, you know, it's all about the people. It comes down to the women and men that I had the opportunity to spend time with, and really that those are the things that have stuck with me. I feel like the community at Holy Cross is just so amazing that, you know, it's really embedded itself in my heart.
There's really no place like Holy Cross, both in the students, the staff, all the professors, and all the connections that you built with all of them.
Completely.
Just part of the Holy Cross community and the feel of it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when I was in college and now saying that is just, it's crazy because just graduated. So now being part of them-
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. It was exciting to have graduation on campus, and I got to see a lot of my classmates who I hadn't seen in a while because I did not go back into campus. So it was a nice moment to be on the Hill, see professors, see fellow students and have that last feel as a
Yes.
student. And then transitioning that to now an alum, part of the Holy Cross Alumni Network, which is exciting. One of my favorite things now as a contracts professional in the defense industry is getting asked what my major was in college and then turning that into a little elevator pitch as to how my sociology major gives me a different perspective and how I add value through that perspective. How did you make use of your liberal arts education, your English and Spanish major to become a leader in business?
Yeah, I do love that opportunity to kind of talk about that, that approach, the liberal arts approach to education as a way to really help other folks understand that it's not just about having a business degree, although that is helpful. Certainly because I went on to business school to refine those skills. But I think what I really love about my liberal arts education, and I, as you heard, I was an English and Spanish major, so I spent very little time on the math and sciences, and I spent a lot of time on literature and also on languages, just really trying to learn and master a language. And what I really found from that was that the humanities teach us so much about how to think and how to appreciate other perspectives and to come at problems in a variety of different ways. And I think also, having looked across literature in both Spanish and English, it gave me this approach where I wasn't just solving a business problem. I was acutely aware of all of the people that were impacted with each of the opportunities that I faced. And so I think, and as I have little kids, I continue to think that liberal arts education is incredibly important, and would absolutely do the same thing if I were given the opportunity to with a do-over. I think liberal arts education sets such a great foundation, and Holy Cross specifically, a really great foundation for how to approach the world and how to consider things. And certainly in business, it's not just about the ones and zeros in tech or the balance sheet or income statement. It is about all of, like, relationships matter so much, how you approach people, how you think through problems. And so I've been really fortified by that. And it's been interesting to see that, a lot of the professionals that I have probably become more close to over my career also share that same background, in that we have a very, we generally tend to have a humanities background that is, paired up with some business training. And I just find that interesting because I do think we solve problems in the same way and we approach life in a very similar way with similar values.
Yeah, no, that is definitely true. And I think, well, of course, as a contracts person,
Mm-hmm.
my entire role is about building that relationship with our customer. And yes, taking into account all of the financials because it is a business, but also fostering those relationships so that it's easier communication. And I understand not only what they want, what the customer wants, but why do they want it? And so is there something that I can work on my end that will make what essentially why they're asking it better, as opposed to exactly what they're asking, and fostering that. I think that the liberal arts education really does engrave itself in it and makes that connection easier.
Yeah.
And do you think that there are benefits to, I mean, you spoke to it already about the benefits of the liberal arts education, but how do you think it compares to individuals who just attended a business school?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really fortified to hear some of the introductions from the women this morning, and to hear a little bit about the programs that that have come up in the last 16 years at Holy Cross around sort of business certificates. Way back in the day when I was there, we did not have as much of a focus on that. And I'm in awe when I hear about Margaret and her double math degrees. I just think that that's so spectacular, because that was definitely not me. But it's funny, I love math, and it just was something that I didn't really focus on. I think the ability to pair liberal arts education with deeper understanding of those skills that are required every day in business is incredibly helpful. I don't think it's an either or. My husband was an engineer in, his training was in engineering, and then he went to business school as well. And it's very interesting to see how we approach problems differently and how we sort through our thinking. And to me, I think, for me, the combination of liberal arts, humanities, and what I was able to fill in, since I spent so little time on business at Holy Cross, with my MBA from Tuck, is incredibly valuable, because now I'm able to think like sort of through two lenses, or pair those two things together. And so when Christina was talking about, her Italian studies plus business certificate, like that to me just kind of made my heart light up, because that's kind of how I think about like what has served me so well, is those two things together. And had I done a better job of focusing on econ or business ethics, or even some advanced level math whilst I was at Holy Cross, maybe I wouldn't have pursued an MBA. But I definitely, following my degree and working for a while, it was clear to me like I needed to get some of those foundations that I had skipped over. But I love the idea of being able to do that all in your time on the Hill.
Yeah, doing what you love, but also having some practicality to it behind, so that you have the skills needed to do what you love efficiently and succeed at it.
Completely. And to be fair, when I was at Holy Cross, I really thought I was going to go into education or be a professor of literature. And so it took me actually getting out into the workforce and working as a consultant for a few years before I really understood just how much I loved the ability to impact a business and drive growth or change in a very different way. And so for me, I didn't have that revelation before I got on the Hill, but afterwards I was like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm going to go.
So going from thinking of being a professor, how did you eventually get into marketing, and what drew you to it specifically?
It's actually a little bit of a long and winding road, because I didn't start there. I was fortunate enough to meet a mentor of mine coming after graduating from Holy Cross, a man by the name of Dan Shine, who was a BC grad, and he used to joke with me that Holy Cross students were really smart and BC students were also really smart, but won lots of sports. And so we would have debates all the time about that. But he encouraged me to pursue management consulting. And so I jumped into management consulting, which I found a really good way to help me frame problems, to take my liberal arts foundations and then to build strategic thinking on top of them. And if not for Dan, I probably would have taken a different path. But I found that in my 4 years of consulting that there were lots of different levers that you could push in business, and marketing was a really powerful one. And it also brought a lot of the storytelling that I loved from my English major. And so I then pursued a number of different marketing roles, primarily in technology, and have spent the better part of my career actually in tech. And what I love about marketing is exactly the art and science of it today. You know, I think in the Mad Men era, it was all about a great story and an amazing set of creative. But today in marketing, you have the great opportunity of not just telling a great story, but you can find out if it works, and you can find out pretty quickly. And so the idea of math plus storytelling and the ability to connect with communities, you know, and to have a different conversation with Nalani than maybe I would have with Cassie, is a really interesting opportunity. And so I really fell in love with that career path, and I think it's something, like I said, I never thought I would fall into, kind of coming out of Holy Cross. But I think that that's really important to understand as well, that, you know, career paths aren't always immediately linear. And they, you know, I think for a long time, I also thought that there were like step function changes where you got promoted and then the next thing happened and then the next thing happened. To me, careers, you know, if you are open to learning and trying different things, there's lots of different ways that your career can evolve. You know, you may start as a contracts professional and end up in a completely different space in aerospace and defense, or in another, you know, field. And I think that that's the really exciting part about career development, is it's really up to you and what continues to drive your interest. Because for me, marketing continues to stoke that. And I've looked across a number, you know, I spent a lot of time in some big brands in tech, but definitely coming to the MBA, it was, you know, no pun intended, it was a whole new ball game. Like, very different things, very, very different audiences, really different approach. And that's exciting to me. That's really exciting that you can have one function that appeals to a variety of different careers.
Yeah, and also that you can take different stuff and like you were saying, you don't talk to people the same way. So same with your experiences. I'm assuming that, you know, the NBA is completely different than your time in Twitch. And so everything differs and you get to experience different things while still doing the one marketing thing. Is just strategically, I'm assuming you go at it differently, and there's steps to it, like you said.
Yeah, I think the commonality that I've really strived for, and I might be jumping ahead, but is I'm really, and I think Holy Cross was really a big part of this. You know, I think, as I mentioned, the community at Holy Cross was something that really impacted how I think about the world and how I approach the world. I really loved being in a smaller liberal arts environment where a lot of the activities happened on campus, and with this you know, core group of people who you got to know over the 4 years. So much so that, you know, I looked for a business school that was very similar. Tuck is a, you know, a smaller business school with, you know, in a similar location where you get to have that same experience. And so I've kind of become obsessed in my career with communities and what brings communities together, how people rally around different values or ideas or content. And you know, I was fortunate to be at a place where tech was really enabling that. And so I was able to see that, whether it was the early days of Microsoft on, I don't know if any of our audience members remember, like IM, like instant messenger, like way back in the day. Like that was the first real set of like how you could talk to people virtually in a way that, that, you know, maybe you would talk to somebody who you didn't actually know in real life. And that evolved, you know, into Facebook, into Twitter, and into Twitch, really different communities connecting with different kinds of people around different kinds of things. And the MBA is just, you know, is another amazing community. There is no better community than a community of fans. You know, fandom for anything you're a fan of is really about both your head and like how the team or how the thing is doing, and your heart, like a real commitment to really loving a brand or a team or a sport. And I think that that's really interesting. And so really trying to talk to communities in a variety of different ways to me is exactly what you were saying, Nalani, which is like you talk to, a gaming community on Twitch really differently than you might talk to, political Twitter. Then maybe, the NBA had to talk to our fans in a really different way during the pandemic versus, pre-pandemic. And what is that? What do we have an opportunity to communicate to that audience of fans at that time? I think, I think you had asked me originally, like, what do I like about being the CMO of the NBA? And I think, I've always, going back a long time ago, I've been a huge sports fan for a good part of my life. But at the same time, I think it's not just about the amazing play on the court. What I love about the NBA and what it is that I get to wake up and do every day is that the NBA also is a brand that stands by its values. And so when we approached the pandemic and we had to pause our season, we really used that opportunity to help educate our fans. If you remember back at the start of the pandemic, like none of us really knew what COVID-19 meant, how to stay safe from it. And we felt like it was an obligation for us, especially given as we saw the virus progress, the disproportionate impact on Black and Brown communities, to really speak to how do you stay safe? How do you protect yourself? How do you protect others? And what are the things that we, the NBA, and our players and our teams can do to help folks understand that? And then, more broadly, we also, really were on the front lines of the fight for social justice. After the murder of George Floyd and the shooting of Jacob Blake, there was a real opportunity, for us to stand by the values that we've had for years and years, and really, speak for what we believe in, which is, the support for our Black and Brown fans, players, colleagues, community, who are, really affected and having a really, really disproportionately different experience than me as a white woman. And so I think, there's a great opportunity to do the joyous excitement of the game, as well as represent values that I think are so strong in the NBA, and really, to me, come back to the values that Holy Cross instilled in me, which is, men and women for others, and this idea that if you are in a position to help someone else, you need to be doing that. And so so for me, it kind of feels full circle all the way through to the values that I hold myself, as well as kind of what I get to do when I wake up every morning and go into work. Sorry, that was a long answer, Nalani.
No, I appreciate you diving into different things and really speaking to things that hold true for you and the place where you work. Because at the end of the day, you want to be in a place that you contribute to the values, but the values are ones that you can stand by and feel you as a person, and that you can feel good about doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that
also, your career is not a sprint, right? It's a marathon. It's been really a long time since I left Holy Cross, but and I still have a lot more in my career to go. And so to me, the idea of waking up every day and getting to focus, like you said, on something that you love and it represents your values is just really an amazing opportunity, and something that I've kind of been working towards throughout my career. So I guess that would be the other nugget, is like, this is a marathon, so pace yourself, because you're going to learn across your career how and what you become as an individual, and how you continue to grow, as well as what continues to speak to you as you grow and as you evolve in your career.
Right. Yeah, and it also speaks to your style of leadership and the progression of it, and the pacing yourself and utilizing different skills, the personal and professional, and everything in between, to become the person that you are and how you present yourself. And that also goes back into what style of leadership you have. And so in thinking about this year's themes of leadership, playing to win, what do you think, or so what is leadership to you, and how do you define it? How do you live it every day?
Yeah, it's funny. I would, if you had asked me that probably 10 years ago, my answer would be really different. In that, I think earlier in my career, leadership was leading from the front. And I think some of that, I've spent the better part of my career in tech and in sports. And that usually means I'm one of the few women in the room. And so there was a very I was very focused on having a voice and ensuring that I was leading from the front for my teams or for the things that I was working on. I think over time, what I've come to respect in leadership is a variety of different ways that you can lead, and I think increasingly, I am finding that leading doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the strongest voice in the room. It often means influencing others. It often means supporting your team. But what leading really comes back to is a deep understanding of the people that you work with every day. And I think we started by talking about relationships. But if I were to think about something that I maybe didn't understand as early or in my career, is that right doesn't always mean it happens. Like the correct answer isn't always what is where you're heading, because you are often working with many different people and you're trying to coordinate and compromise and collaborate. And so being right doesn't really matter. At the end, it matters about how you can bring everybody along with you to get to what is right for everyone. And that doesn't mean, completely diminishing your own sense of what's right, but it is a lot more about how you can be together in a team. And I think, I have always been into team sports. I always loved crew because it was 8 women in a boat with a coxswain trying to get, to a specific destination together. And it was really important that everybody was pulling and working together to get there. And I think that is very much what I've seen in my what I define as leadership over time. And so when I think about playing to win, I think earlier it would have been maybe a solo win, me crossing the finish line, and succeeding in what I was trying to do. I think over time, what I've come to appreciate and really focus on is winning means a lot of different things, and it is more about the greater good. And doing what's right for the business or doing what's right for the team. And the more people that win, the better it feels when you're trying to move in that direction. And that's sometimes a hard thing to get to, because if you are passionate about something, you often have very strong feelings about the way it should go, and that's awesome. But really, how do you bring that passion to a place where it can inspire and motivate others, not just kind of create an environment where this is the right answer, therefore we should do. So, I love this notion of playing to win, with this idea that can mean so many different ways of doing it. And it's really about how you show up and how you can work with others to do that in business, at least.
Yeah, so leadership is more of like a team sport. I like that idea.
I actually had when I first got to the NBA, I actually had marketing as a team sport t-shirts, because I wanted everyone to understand that it's not just about like an individual team, it's about all of us working together to do the right thing. And I love that. Like, I think team sports are, solo sports are amazing and, sort of mind blowing to me. and team sports are where you get to see, the power of 5 individuals on the court or 8 women in a boat, or, like, it's really amazing.
Yeah, no, and from you speaking about it, it was exciting for me to hear about it, and the way that you think about it has definitely changed my perspective a bit. Is starting off, you want to show your voice, and like you were saying, sometimes you'll find yourself in positions where you might be the only female in the room. And so wanting to have a voice so that yours doesn't get lost can be difficult when you're also trying to be part of a group.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the being the female in the group and sometimes being the only one there. Have there been noticeable obstacles that you've had to cross as a woman in leadership that your male coworkers haven't?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, right? Because this is my experience, but I will say, yeah, definitely. I think there are a number of different places. You know, certainly as a marketer in tech, back when I started, there was a definite belief that marketing wasn't needed if your product was good enough. And so there was a lot of time where I was the only woman in the room trying to explain the value of what I was bringing to the team, and why engineers and product managers and other folks, men or women, should value, that perspective. And then, as I've gotten older in my career, I definitely, there's just definitely places where, being pregnant at work and having to think about what that means for the rest of your career, is a choice. And I see, a lot of my friends made different choices coming out of their pregnancies. And then I think, as you look at building, my husband has a big job. I have a big job. We have 2 kids. And so really trying to balance all of those things, I think, it's often, I think one time that I spoke to him, he was the only one who had a wife that worked at all. And so, like, everybody has a different family situation going on. And I think that is just, it creates a different dynamic for women in the workplace. I think we've seen this through the pandemic, so many women leaving the workforce because they have family situations they need to deal with. They are caring for children or elders, or it's just, working is too hard given where we are, with everything that's happening. And to me, when I look at that disproportionate impact on women throughout this pandemic, that's something that gives me real pause, as I think about both kind of what we have support wise, in the U.S. for families, but also, in thinking about recruiting and maintaining my current team, how do I give them the support that I can, to ensure that, the women on my team feel like they have as much support as maybe someone else who isn't dealing with those things outside the office. And so I do think that there's a natural difference. And certainly when, as a woman of color yourself, I'm sure, being the only one of anything in a room is definitely challenging. And I think it also sometimes gives you pause about, like, am I right? Am I in the right place? Like, should I be here? And I think that's a big thing that, has definitely played in my head of how to prove value without making myself feel less than. And so, yeah, I do think that being a woman in business continues to be something that is a challenge. And I would say, even at the MBA, which is one of the most diverse places that I've ever worked, and it is truly great. There's still just huge opportunities for us to do more with women and people of color to really, not just have that diversity, but to have the inclusion that comes along with that to make people feel secure in who they are as they are contributing. And I would go so far as to say that's been just true across my entire career. It's just, we continue to push the ball forward, but maybe not at the pace that I was hoping by this point in my career.
Yeah, no, and one of the things specifically that stood out when you, of all the things that you were saying, is the feeling of, should I be here? What spot do I hold here? And I sometimes felt that, not just because of being a woman, being of color, but also starting off in my career when there's so many different people who have such diverse backgrounds and experiences that perhaps might align better with the aerospace industry. I've found myself in those positions, and I have such great mentors in my group of my cohort in the contracts leadership development program have been so great at saying, Nalani, like, no, you're fine. This is it's okay. Don't feel that way. Don't feel it at all. But the imposter syndrome is always there. Have you felt that in your career? How have you dealt with it? What things have helped? What's the secret sauce? Is there one?
Okay, so yes, and yes, and yes. And I would just go so far to say any of the women that I know at similar levels, frankly, anybody at, even I speak to women because that's my experience, but I think my male colleagues have expressed similar things. Absolutely. Almost everybody has an imposter syndrome. I just think some people are better at hiding it than others. And I think it's somewhat natural as you continue to strive to do anything at a really high level, whether that's, being a contracts professional, whether that's being a marketer, whether that's being a mom, like whatever it is that you're trying to do at a high level and to the best of your abilities. I think there's always moments when you're like, I don't know, do I really deserve this? Should I be at this table? Am I doing this right? And I think the answer is, like, everybody's trying to figure it out at the same time. Certainly my years of experience have given me expertise that I didn't have earlier in my career, but there's still moments when, I'm sitting in a room of people and I'm like, ooh, like, these people are really impressive. How do I fit in here? And I think it's totally natural. And I would be surprised if someone said that they didn't have that feeling. I think even when you're an incredibly confident individual with incredible skills, there are moments in time where you feel insecure. And for me, the way to deal with that, and this maybe isn't like the secret sauce, is that everybody's just doing the best they can. Like, everybody is figuring, in parenting, everybody's figuring it out as they go along because every kid's different. In marketing, there are some foundational skills that you need to have and you need to understand, but every situation's different, and you're definitely learning and growing in every different way. And similarly, I wouldn't dare to think about your profession, but I would imagine, like, there are things that you do consistently as a contracts professional, and then there are things that are like, ooh, I've not seen that before. How do we want to handle that? And I think as women, and certainly as people of color, like, I think it's just the added, like, oh, and I'm one of few, or I'm the only one in this room. And that creates anxiety as well, because the norm is not maybe what we look like. And I think that is a place where you're just constantly balancing on how much do you show up authentically and how much do you kind of monitor yourself in the room. And probably sometime about 5 years ago, I just decided to be who I am. And so you can probably tell in this conversation, I'm a little bit more casual, and I prefer having conversations over, and debates over like presentations. I just think that, and I just decided to show up that way in everything rather than trying to fit into a mold that I thought other folks wanted to see. It's embarrassing that it took me that long in my career, but I also feel so free in doing that, in that it's just always me. And I also think that has reduced my sense of like, oh, maybe I need to be a different person to fit in here, because I don't think that does anybody any benefit. But imposter syndrome is real, and I wish I could say it goes away later in your career, but it doesn't. And so it's really about like how you choose to manage it. I just think to myself, everybody's winging it. Everybody's just trying to figure out what's going on, because certainly in the last 2 years, if you had ever told me that we were going to be facing a global pandemic and everything was going to be shut down and we were going to be working from home for 18 months, I would have been like, sure, yeah. But we had to figure it out. And what's remarkable, as you look at students, as you look at Holy Cross, as you look at different businesses, we did. Like, this as a society, we're pretty resilient. And I think that comes down to individuals who are also incredibly resilient and push through. And I definitely feel like a lot of that came from Holy Cross for me, like the ability to be a part of a community, but also be your individual self.
Yeah, and being your whole self is something that I've heard a lot as I start my career, of bringing your whole self and staying true to who you are, and managing that in a space where maybe there's some history that's already there, and how things work is how they've been working for X amount of years. And we're getting close to the portion of Q&A.
Okay, perfect.
So we're moderating those as they come in. There's a question from Huva. What piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to change industries mid-careers? Is it often a lateral move?
Great question. So first, the premise that I would have is that for my career is that I always make decisions based on how much can I learn. Like obviously financials factor in, and obviously, the interest in the position, but, I could have stayed in tech for the rest of my career, but what I really was excited about is just what I could learn at the NBA, and the amount of things that I've learned in the last 2.5 years has been amazing. And so, now I'm on the board of a publicly traded company. I chose that based on what can I learn from this? How can I continue to grow and widen the aperture? And so, as you look at making career changes, whether it's early in your career or mid-career, sometimes it is a lateral move, but I don't think that that's necessarily. It feels at the time like that might not be the best thing, but I think what I have seen is that's often for a moment in time. And then as you get your feet grounded in this new industry, the velocity is a lot faster because you're able to bring what you have already learned with you. And so for me, it hasn't, I know it's easy to say this now because I do have a title, but it hasn't been about title or level. A lot of times it's been much more about, is this a place where I think I can grow? And is this a place where I'm going to wake up every day and be like, yeah, this is something I really want to do with my life. And it's not easy. I mean, I definitely found moving from tech to sports, I thought it was like, I think I know how to do this now. It's been very difficult to make that switch, even, later in my career, in that, just industries are different, the networks are different. And so giving yourself some time, even at a lateral level, is great to really ground yourself and kind of like learn around you. And it also kind of depends. If you're moving from aerospace to media, it's different than if you're moving from, aerospace and defense into government. Like then there's probably more of a connection. I'm guessing. I don't know. Nalani would know better than me.
Yeah, for sure. But and I specifically liked your answer and where can I learn the most, because that's where you'll make the most mistakes. And one of the advice that I got early on was try to make mistakes, because if you do everything right, you're not going to be, yes, you'll get the job done and that's great, but you won't learn the skills that it takes to solve a problem or solve a mistake that you've done. So I like that answer of learning.
I could not agree more with you. I will say, the times when I've learned most in my career is when things were the hardest or when I made the most mistakes. Being in a place and part of that is learning, right? Like fail, certainly in tech, we say fail fast. But I definitely, when I look back at the jobs that I've had, there have been places where it's felt delightful and easy. And you know what? I learned very little there. And then there were places where I failed a bunch or we had leadership challenges or we had business challenges. And those are the places that I hearken back to. And I'm like, oh, remember that? Remember that? Like, what did you learn from that? Oh, you learn things not to do and you learn things to do differently. And so I absolutely, absolutely believe in making mistakes and feeling good about those mistakes. Like, it can't feed into any insecurity because everybody makes mistakes.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that came up: how do you continue to generate marketing ideas year after year, and what inspires that innovation?
Oh my gosh, this is such a great question. I don't know is probably the answer. I think what I love is audience focus. So when just a interesting challenge that we're facing now at the NBA is we primarily distribute our games via TV. Lots of folks, our older viewers watch a lot of TV and are consuming. Our younger viewers, and we have some of the youngest audience of any professional sport around the globe, spend less time on TV. And so where are we meeting them with our content? How do we encourage them to come to games is really different than perhaps how I'm talking to people of my parents' generation who, have the TV on all the time and that's their primary way of engaging. And so it is a really unique opportunity to really think about, who are the people that speak to our younger 18 to 34 viewers versus who are the people and the messages that speak to our 55 plus audience. And this year is our 75th anniversary season. And so there's a great opportunity to talk about the history with our older viewers and to talk about how that history has impacted the game today and what about the NBA today for our younger viewers. Because, it breaks my heart, but, one of my favorite players of all time, Michael Jordan, kids today think he makes sneakers. They don't even really know that he was a tremendous player. And if that's new news to anyone on this Zoom, I will just cry internally. But I think that's a huge opportunity. Like, how do you bring Michael Jordan to the masses in a way that isn't just about Air Jordans? And I think that those types of challenges inspire a lot of different creative ideas. And then data, you get to actually look at numbers and say oh, actually this is what's working. We're doing a lot of influencer work to speak to this younger audience and meeting them on platforms like Snapchat, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, where fans are, not just expecting them to get over to watch TV, just maybe their parents or their grandparents are doing. So it's something that I think about all the time, and I start with the fan or the customer every time to really drive that innovation and that thought.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I was really surprised by that. is I mean, my uncles love watching basketball, and so younger I would, and so I know that, but that's really surprising.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting opportunity for sure.
We're about to go into the overtime. So the last question, one that came in through the Q&A, is there any advice for breaking into the tech industry mid-career?
Yes, and I'd be happy to follow up because this is a whole thing. I think, I think what's really interesting is what you define as tech. And so are you talking about like the big companies like Facebook, Netflix, Google, Apple, Yeta, or are you talking about small startups? And I think what's really interesting and has changed certainly than when I started in tech is that so many of these businesses really are focused on people who can help extend their growth or their abilities in different areas. So whether you're a really great finance person, you're a really amazing marketer, you really understand business operations, and you want to focus on that, there are so many more opportunities. And I think what often you need to focus on is sort of how you can break in to those different companies. And I think larger companies sometimes are easier to do that with. If you think about an Amazon, there's so many different types of roles at Amazon. And there's a real opportunity to learn from inside around like what tech you're interested in. Is it their retail business? Is it their Amazon Web Services? Is it Alexa? And to really take your expertise from finance or from wherever you are today into that. So be happy to follow up offline because I this is also a question I get a lot at Tuck when I go to speak to as an alumni there. So would love to carry on the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you for your time.
I'm so glad. This was so fun. Thank you so much for your time, Nalani.
Of course, no, more than happy to. This was so great. So really, really appreciate it. And it was great chatting with you this morning.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I hope to be on the Hill sometime soon where we can see each other face to face. Good luck with contracts. I'm excited for the next chapter.
Thank you for sure. And I'm so excited to be back on the Hill sometime.
Yes.